great to be here.
Oh, it's great having you. Corey, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
All right. I'm 24 from a small town in Alaska. Well, it's small. I mean, there's maybe 24,000 people here. The small area is about 20, 25 miles across. You can pretty much have all of the people in one little area. It takes maybe 20 minutes to cross the entire city. We're all in one tiny wooded area. I grew up hunting in the woods. I've been shooting since I was 5. I've seen everything from grizzly bears to wolves, coyotes, hawks, grouse, rabbit. I've skinned everything but bear and wolf. Had the opportunity, though. I've been camping all my life, as well as fishing, including dip netting, deep sea fishing, halibut, salmon. I've done 1 year of college in wildlife biology, and that's pretty much it.
You mentioned your experiences in the woods, and you mentioned that you've seen a grizzly or grizzlies in the past. How close have you been to a grizzly before?
That encounter is about 20 feet.
How did you react? Some people, when they get that close, they fall apart. Other people take it in stride.
I was a little surprised because it kind of snuck up on me. Just paused, was really still, and waited for him to leave.
It snuck up on you.
Yeah, I was filling up my water bottle in a creek, and there was nothing around at that time. I bent down to fill up the bottle, looked back up, and he was across the creek.
Oh, wow. When it got that close, did you get the impression that it was getting that close because of you, or was it just happenstance?
I think it was just happenstance. It just looked thirsty.
Oh, okay, thank goodness. I've been to Alaska more than once, Corey. Some areas of the state are pretty flat. Other areas are really mountainous. Where you live, if you can be vague enough to not give away the exact location, what's the topography like there? Is it pretty flat or is it pretty hilly?
It actually varies. This particular area is mostly flat woodland. That's pine forest and a bit of taiga. And then toward the outer reaches, and you start to get further north, it goes into hilly swamps.
Hilly swamps?
Yeah, north of Fairbanks.
Oh, okay, I see. As far as a food supply would go for dogmen in the area, what are the large prey animals? Just deer, or do you have other types of prey animals around?
The only actual deer are down in the island. The biggest prey here are moose. And Alaskan moose are different from the lower 48 moose. They get up to 2,000 pounds, sometimes a little more.
Oh, I've seen Alaskan moose before, and up close too. They are pretty sizable. I wouldn't want to tangle with one.
I wouldn't either, and I've been chased by them.
Oh, that's not good. I understand from the pre-interview that after you had that first encounter, you did mention it to your mother. What was her response like when you mentioned that you had seen one?
She said it was a bear and not to worry about it.
Did you make it clear how closely and how clearly you had seen that dog man?
Yes, she's one of those very logical, literal people that must see it to believe it, especially if it's out of the normal.
Oh, okay, I see. Without getting into any of the details of your encounters, have any of your neighbors told you that they might have seen dogmen on their property or around their houses?
I think one might have, but he wasn't very clear about it. No one feels like being publicly ridiculed. He just mentioned there was something poking around, and has adjusted his property likewise to maybe see it, but so far nothing.
Is this a neighbor who has property touching yours, or are they just in the area?
They're about 200, 250 feet in front of the house, across the road.
Okay, I see. Does your property have a stand of woods that touches it or is really close to it?
Yes, actually. The entire city is covered in woods. You can go from one part of the city to the other part in woods and never touch concrete.
Well, those are perfect conditions then. It can come out, do what it wants, and then duck into the woods and be under cover in no time. Is there much in the way of water there? Do you have streams running through those woods you just mentioned?
Ironically, there is a slough 20 feet behind the house, and it stretches the entire city.
Oh, that's perfect. Couldn't ask for any better conditions. Corey, what was the first hint that you had a dog man or dog men in the area?
Random howls and knockings and the random lights going off, motion lights going off in the neighborhood. Usually it's a bit odd in the middle of the night. It usually tells it a nocturnal predator, so we instantly think bears or wolves, and we go checking for tracks, and I couldn't find any tracks, which left a puzzlement, and that was the first clue that something was off.
I'm sure you had no clue what was at the heart of all that activity.
No clue at all, and I really wish it had been a regular wolf.
I can understand that. You mentioned your schooling for college. Have you learned anything with that education that you can apply towards learning more about dogmen, or does it not cross over?
It can. If these things are similar to regular wolves, and you can apply at least a little bit of their behavior to it, I believe I might be able to figure out territorial patterns, maybe the size of territories, possible pack build-up and hierarchy, maybe probable age for lifespan.
Oh, that makes sense. After you found out that you do have a dogman or dogmen in the area, was your attitude, I just wish they'd go away? Or were you interested to the point where you just wanted to research them and get every last bit of info on them that you could figure out?
A bit of both. I'm highly curious and want to learn about them and study them, and I have been looking them up. At the same time, I don't want them around the house, and I don't want to see another one.
I can understand. Once you have a good look at one of these things, that's totally understandable. All right, Corey, let's get into the encounters here. You told me 2 days ago you were leaving for work when you had an interesting experience. Please tell us about that. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
All right. I was getting ready to leave for work about 3:45 p.m., middle of the daylight here. Was walking toward the car, and I noticed a bunch of really big dog prints. It looked just like a wolf track, except they're the size of my foot, and I've got a size 9 foot. It's about 15 feet to the car. I get about 10 feet to it, following these tracks, and they veer off toward my neighbor's property to the left, and there's a highway after another 50 feet of woods past that. It kind of looks like it went toward the road to cross. Not that nothing of it, since I didn't hear anything that night. And I went, all right. A little spooky, but okay. Got toward the car, opened up the car door, and I hear this loud thump, like something smashed into the back of the house, and it was behind me. So I instantly turned around, and I saw this big clawed hand. It almost looked like it took a dog's paw and extended the fingers, put large claws on it. It was black in color, and it was dragging the hand out behind the house, like it was dragging the hand behind it as it was going behind the house. It vanished after a couple of seconds. I heard nothing more for a whole minute. I stood there frozen in shock. Got back in the car after that. I wasn't about to stick around to see if it was still there, and left for work. Didn't say anything to anybody. I have told my coworkers that there's something floating around the house, but they all think it's a bear. I was not about to stay to get a picture up for otherwise.
I can't say I'll blame you. That self-preservation right there is a good idea to clear out of that area. When this was all going on, did you ever smell anything, any unusual scents?
On rare occasions when the wind does pick up, there'd be the smell of a wet dog, sometimes meat. I've smelled nothing else out of the unusual around here, but it's the same kind of smells you smell with other predators, such as wolves and bears. They carry the similar smells with them.
After it was gone, you didn't notice that smell lingering? It just dissipated like you would expect?
Mostly. Sometimes it stays for an hour or two.
Okay, I see. Right before you saw that dog man or heard that crash or maybe even saw those footprints in the ground, did you suffer any uncontrollable bouts of fear, unexplainable anxiety, anything like that?
Not necessarily. Just real apprehension for the dark.
When you saw those prints in the ground, knowing as much about wildlife as you do, did you notice that it was moving fast when it had left those prints, i.e., A lot of distance between each print, or did it seem to be plodding along?
It seemed to just be plodding along a slow trot away from the house. Like it had come to investigate or was just passing by.
Okay, I see. Did you ever go out there and measure those prints to see exactly how big they were?
Not with a measuring tape, but I used my own foot. I said I've got a size 9 foot, and most of them are about the same size.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that would put it well out of the range of being any dog.
It is within bear range, though.
When you saw that print, were you thinking that it was maybe a front paw?
That's what I was thinking, except that it was a little too narrow. It almost looked perfectly like a wolf, which was the odd part.
I'll bet that did throw you off. Did you notice anything peculiar when you looked at how the toes in that print hit the ground?
It looked more like the weight was in the heel bit, and the claws almost never touched what was left of the snow, and it just kept, like it was trying to keep its balance on the back heel, which is very odd for any wolf or a bear.
I see. I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to share a story with you that's related to this question. You mentioned seeing that big clawed hand seemingly rake the house. After the fact, when you went back to investigate, did you ever notice any gouges in the wall of the house?
Only a few scratch marks from the claw, and they're very tiny. It almost looks like you took like your own fingernail and went up against something.
What kind of surface was that left in?
Pine wood?
Pine wood, okay. The story I'm going to share with you, it relates to what we're talking about right here, about the claw marks in the side of the house. There was a woman who shared this with me probably about 9-10 months ago, so please forgive me if I butcher the details, but the way it played out was it was late one night when she and her friends decided to leave this trailer park that she and her friends lived in. They went for this nice long walk. It was a nice summer night. They were, I think, maybe half a mile to a mile away from their house, just walking through the country when they were walking up this road in front of this farmhouse or some house out in the country. Well, her friends were deep in conversation. They weren't paying attention to their whereabouts, but this woman, she looked up the driveway of that property, and at the very back of the driveway, right next to the house, there were some trash cans that were set out. She noticed that something didn't look quite right, and after studying that area for a brief moment, she noticed that there were some eyes staring at her in the dark. They had some kind of an eye shine effect going on. I can't remember the color, but she did notice the eyes. She stopped, and as she was staring, this dog man stood up. It had been hiding behind those trash cans, and when it noticed that she had noticed it, it stood up, realizing its cover had been blown. It walked away, and in her mind, that was it. She thought the story was over. Well, she hurried to catch up with her friends and shared what she had seen with her friends. Fast forward to late that night / early that next morning. She was in the trailer alone, had her cat or cats with her, when all of a sudden her cats started acting funny. She didn't think that anything was going on. She just tried to get them to calm down and went back to sleep. Well, from what I remember, I think not long after that, she got up and got ready, and next thing you know, she went outside, I think just to leave for the day. When she went outside, she noticed these claw marks that had been raked or gouged into the wall of her mobile home. I'm not sure exactly how deep they were, but from what she told me, they were pretty deeply gouged into that metal of the wall. When you talked about seeing that clawed hand raking the wall of your house, that instantly made me think about that story that woman had shared with me. And that story that I just related to you, that's not exactly an isolated incident. It's almost like that dog man followed them home to her house and marked her house. I don't know what that was all about, but it doesn't get much creepier than that.
It didn't leave that much of a gouge, almost a basic scratch.
Sounds like you got off lucky. Do any other people in your household know about these dog men and the fact that they're around?
My little brother has seen just the eyes and the shape, not the full detail.
If your little brother knows that they're around, has he had an encounter with them, or if not, how does he know about them?
His first major encounter was when he was a kid. During Halloween, we got snow everywhere, a good 5 foot. we used to have a miniature house that was built up to play in about 70 feet away near the wood line on the right side of the property. And he was walking back toward the house on the road, was about 20 feet away from the house, and felt something staring at him. Looked over and saw a pair of yellow eyes, standing almost even with the height of the house, which is almost 7 foot, just staring at him. It then ducked down kind of below the house where the boards were keeping it up off the ground. And my brother tried to play like peekaboo with the eyes to see what it was. At that time of year, it's very, very dark. You can't see really much. And he couldn't make out exactly what it was, but it still spooked him. He came in the house, told my dad that something was out there. My dad walked out with a gun and a flashlight, walked the area, couldn't find anything except some wolf tracks, and said, well, you saw a wolf. Don't be scared. And led him back in the house and left it at that. And he didn't think anything of it until these recent bouts of encounters a couple of months ago when he saw the shape in front of the garage, and it instantly reminded him of that.
Is that the brother you were telling me about where some strange activity involving his car door was going on?
Yep, same little brother.
Please tell us what's been going on with that.
Well, for a couple of weeks leading up to that, I could hear the car door opening and closing randomly. In the middle of the night, it would set the motion lights off. And almost always at midnight to 2 in the morning, couldn't see anything out there without any light. Pitch black unless it's full moon. This particular set of nights, there was no full moon. I came home one particular night at about 12:30. It was pitch black. Even with the headlights, you can only see maybe 20 feet in front of you. I parked my car into its parking space about 15 feet away from the house. And we've got a double-door garage and a 2-story house. I was walking toward the house, started to get toward the house, and I noticed it kind of felt silent and eerie, which is almost normal for Alaska, but sometimes a squirrel or a bird starts chirping on it. You hear something. And I thought, well, okay, this is weird. Continued on to the house, got into the garage, into the house, went upstairs, and I've got a bed that lays on the second story that's looking out toward a window. If I look out the window, I've got a lower left view. It's about 15 feet down into the front part of the patio of the house. There's a porch. And I went and laid in that and just went, all right, I'm going to go to bed. My brother was sitting across on his bed trying to go to sleep while viewing Facebook on his phone. We start to sit there and go to sleep. Next thing I know is maybe half an hour later, I hear the car door being opened and closed again. I see the motion light go off. I get up and I look, and there's nothing there. I thought, well, okay, that's odd. Maybe somebody's playing with us, or I'm imagining things. I went, lay down back in the bed, waited about another half hour, and it started going up again. I thought, okay, this is really odd. I got up and I took a look, and I got more of a look than I wanted. It was standing there with the car door open on part of the porch right next to the car. This car is a little 2000 black Subaru. It was standing well above it. The porch light for the motion sensor was right on it. And where it hit halfway up where the head is and then down. So I got a perfect view of that. I saw a big, muscular body, look like a football player with hair. It was pitch black with a bit of brown, almost russet in places. Like it was starting to age. I saw the clawed hand, and it was holding the car door open. And the car door light was hitting the back of it, which I couldn't see. I saw the dog legs, almost like a wolf leg, had been bent, like that bent backward bit, and it was standing, the legs spread apart. It was angled toward the house, so I had a nice enough view of it. And as I was looking down the feet, I was trying to comprehend where the other 2 feet were. I saw the hand, and I'm going, what? I then look up further to see the head, and I see this, it almost looked like a mix between a wolf and a German Shepherd head. I see wolf because the face looked like a wolf, like a werewolf, right out of a movie, almost. Kind of a short, thick snout, a little longer than most dogs, black nose, and it was looking at me. I saw the ears. They're pointed, almost like that of a German Shepherd or a wolf, just kind of pointed up, leaning in with a bit of tuff. I couldn't see the detail of the tuff. I don't know how far they went. What got me most was those eyes. It was like the light was glinting off of them. Something like an eye shine, but they were red. I've never seen anything outside of a photograph with a red eye. And that spooked me big time. I stared into these eyes, slowly backed away from the window, and grabbed my phone, slid through it real quick until I found a picture of a werewolf, called my brother over, and went, dude, this is outside of our house right now. Showing the picture. He went, what? I moved aside. He started to look out the window and thought his car door was still open, but nothing was there. His first reaction was, well, there's somebody out there. I'll grab the gun and go scare him off. I grabbed him, told him, no, do not open that door. Grab the gun, but don't open the door. Next thing we hear is the car door close. We both look out, and we see this dark figure moving off toward the woods to the right of the house. There's a good 70 feet to that wood line. In about 5-6 seconds, it had already hit that wood line and disappeared through 4 feet of snow. And it's all powdered snow. I don't know of any human athlete that can do that on 2 feet. It's impossible. We both went immediately and grabbed the biggest guns we could find, sat next to the bed, and we heard nothing the rest of the night. Neither of us slept.
How far was this dog man from you when you looked out the window and saw it down there doing that to the car?
15, 20 feet from the window to that porch.
Well, that's really close. The moment that you saw that dog man, you mentioned that it was looking at you, but something I'm not clear on, when you looked out the window and saw it, was it already staring at you, or was it not until a few moments after you had been observing it that it turned and noticed that you were looking out the window?
I'm not quite sure, but I think it wasn't aware that I was looking at it first until later. Like I said, I started at the feet and the hand and then left up. And by the time I got to the head, it was staring right at me. So I think it later noticed after it had opened the door, almost as if it might have been opening the car door to lure us out or to get attention.
I see. As far as height goes, how tall was it?
Let's see, that Subaru's about 5.5. We almost stand over it. I'd say it was probably 6-7 feet, maybe.
As far as its arm length would go, how would you describe them?
Top of the arm is almost like a human, where it's got that built up shoulder. Comes into the bicep. Forearm almost looked a mix between a wolf and a human, similar setup with the forearm. The paw was like a dog hand. Instead of the opposable thumb, the 5th digit was right next to it, but they were extended. And it looked like it could maneuver them, like ours, coil them back and forth, which is what it had them around that car handle door, and it pulled it open. And they were long, much longer than a human's. The one that wasn't holding the car door was dangling kind of toward the waist and went a little bit past it.
Do you remember from looking at them, and I'm sure it's hard to do this, but I still want to ask anyway, do you remember the length of the upper arm compared to the length of the lower arm? Were they almost the same, or was there a noticeable difference?
I mean, between the legs and the arms themselves.
No, as far as the length of the upper arm and the length of its forearm, just curious how the lengths of those two sections of its arms would compare.
I would say they were almost even. Like the upper part of it was extended a little in length, and then the forearm had that like dog stretch to it. I'd say they're almost. It looked similar length, but the forearm was a little longer.
You said the forearm had kind of a dog stretch to it. Could you elaborate on that? I'm not quite following you on that.
If you look at a dog's leg, especially in the front leg, you'll notice that the bottom part of it is extended and rotated differently to ours, where the bones are set, and the muscles are hardened where they keep having an impact on it. If you've ever tried to stand up on four legs rather than your two, you notice that there's a bit of an imbalance in the length. Most canines and even cats have their forearms stretched a little to accommodate for that extra length so that they can stand evenly on four. That's why chimpanzees have extended arms.
I follow you now. You're saying its forearms were stretched in that manner to compensate for when it went down on all fours, apparently.
Yes, and it would explain for their speed on all fours.
Have you ever found any prints that they've left in the area where they were on all fours? It sounds up to this point like you've only seen them leaving bipedal tracks.
I think there might have been one, but the snow is starting to melt at the time that I think I saw it, so it looked really weird. It almost looked like a bear track. Almost the way it was set, because the claws extend the same way a bear does when it has its front paw on, or even the back paw. So it almost looks similar to that, but part of it was missing. So like only the claw bits were there, and the back heel bit was gone.
Yeah, that is strange. Having had that good of a look at it from 15 to 20 feet away when it was in that kind of light from the light you mentioned that was full on, what kind of length did you notice for its claws on its fingertips?
Maybe 2-3 inches.
Ooh. Yeah, that's more than enough to ruin your day.
And then some.
Yeah, I'd say. Knowing animals the way you do, Corey, and also having seen this thing so well, how do you think they would fare if they did go toe-to-toe with the bear when you consider how big a dog man was, like the one that you saw, the weapons it can bring to bear, and its attitude? How do you think that would play out if they did run into a bear in the woods?
Black bear, it's dead. No competition. Grizzly, if it's a big boar, which is a male, and it's healthy, it could probably stand up a good fight, but I'm pretty sure the bear would lose. The only thing that might stand up to these and win, a Kodiak brown bear. Might have a chance.
Yeah, that's one fight that I'd pay some pretty good money to see play out, especially with one of the bigger dog men. They can get a lot bigger than the one that you're talking about right now.
If I've done my homework right, 9 feet.
Yeah, they can actually get bigger than that if the reports that came in about 10 and 11 footers can be believed. Talking about the animals in the area, you mentioned having moose in the area, and I'm sure you've got deer in the area too. Have you noticed any strange kills that were kind of inexplicable? Whenever a wolf or a bear kills, it has a certain way of going about it. Knowing as much about animals as you do, have you found any carcasses around that made you wonder what had killed them because of the strange manner the carcass was left in?
A few birds. There was one hawk. It looked like it had its head ripped and twisted around and then left on the ground. One of my neighbor's dogs in the next neighborhood, their dog had been killed and ripped. Like it had its guts ripped open and left out in the snow. And it was dragged through the woods Those are the only two really odd kills. But that have been floating around. It has been winter, so a lot of stuff isn't moving around very much. I'm expecting a lot more to start occurring now that it's spring and soon going to be summer when everything is starting to move around a lot.
Yeah, it's not going to be all that long before everything really picks up and everything's active, like you mentioned, I'm sure. Speaking of the woods, have you changed your behavior out in the woods as a direct result of you knowing the dogmen are around?
Well, I no longer go out after nightfall, ever. I used to quite a bit. I'm comfortable in the dark until this. Now I just can't do it. And I'm very, very cautious. Always have at least one weapon on me, whether it's a large knife or a pistol, 9mm 45. Whatever I can get my hands on, really. And I'm constantly watching my back and rechecking every sound. I don't know when one's going to be there or not.
Since your mother doesn't believe that they exist, knowing that they're around, they're in the area, who knows how often, but they definitely seem to be around, does it worry you sick, the idea that she's going to come in from work and not take the precautions that she would take, you would imagine, if she knew that they were there in the area?
I do get very worried about it, yes. But she's had encounters with bears and moose coming home, so she does have a firearm on her at all times. So I'm not too worried that she will completely panic, but I'm worried about it coming in the house when my brother and I aren't home.
Yeah, that is a scary thought, the idea of you coming home, not realizing it's in the house and winding up having it right there face to face with you in a back bedroom or something. That's not good.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought.
Oh, I'd say it is. Well, Corey, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Only that after seeing one, anyone who goes looking for one, you're in for a nightmare. If you've seen a football player run and tackle somebody, or you've been tackled by them, magnify that. And then add claws and teeth to it with a bad temper. That's what you're asking for. And if they're anything like normal wolves, if there's one, there's constantly going to be more of them. Unless they're rogues, wolf packs can have up to 12 or 16 members, sometimes more. There's a mega wolf pack out there with hundreds. If most of the reports I've heard are right, you're looking at least 3 or 4 of them in this area. That is what you're dealing with. Not just one, but multiple things that will kill you, especially if they're hungry or frightened, feel threatened. And these things seem very territorial. Just don't do it. Please.
You make some really good points. Yeah, as if running into one isn't bad enough. I can't even imagine being out there in the middle of nowhere and encountering 4, 5, or 6 of them. That'd be really bad.
Yes, I'm thinking a lot of Alaskans actually have. They've had 20,000 disappearances in the last 50 years. If you do the math, that's more than one per day, and only 1% of them are actually accounted for. Most of them are just random disappearances. I'm thinking people have gone hiking or hunting and ran across them.
Those are some pretty unnerving statistics. With all the open country that people just normally don't go into, I can understand how that would happen, and no one would ever know what the cause was. Having said that, thanks again so much, Corey, for coming on the show and sharing the details of your experiences. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. It was great fun.
Oh, it was great talking with you. Well, have yourself a great night, okay?
You too, Vic.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host for the show. Before we get started, if you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. Tonight's guest is John Locklear. John, welcome to the show.
Hi, Vic. How you doing?
I'm doing good, and you, bud?
Pretty good.
Good. Thanks for being here. Well, let's dive into this, John. For starters, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, I'm 35. I'm a mechanic. Got 2 kids, married. I stay in a rural area, pretty much the same area that my encounter happened in. That's all really I can think of at the moment.
Since you live in the area where you said you had your encounter, do you struggle with that, or are you okay with that?
Well, it's pretty decent now because there really ain't too much wooded areas no more. There's like a few acres of patched woods, and around the river there's stretches of wood, but other than that area, it makes me feel a little bit more better about where I stay at.
Yeah, I'd imagine that would help a lot.
Yeah.
If you had trees all around you, taking the trash out at night would be a nightmare, but since it sounds like most of the trees are gone, it's got to be a lot easier.
Yeah, that trash had to sit in the house till in the morning. I just don't feel comfortable no more anywhere. I just had that feeling of being watched. I don't know, it's just uncomfortable after that encounter.
Oh, no, I can understand. Were you into werewolves and other monsters when you were growing up?
No, that was actually my first experience was that night. And then after that happened, then that's how I ended up started looking into stuff like that. But at the time when that happened, I was so young that you never really heard nothing about werewolves or dogmen. Back then when that happened, the only things I hear about was Michael J. Fox on Teen Wolf.
Yeah, I saw that movie. In a way, it would be nice if that was as bad as it got, but unfortunately it does get a lot worse than that.
Yeah, like a mad cat.
Yeah, I'd say. I know it's hard to imagine in any way being glad about having a dogman encounter, but are you glad that you had that encounter? Because now, if you think about it, you know they're out there and you can behave accordingly when you're in the woods.
In a way I do, but then in the back of my head I wished I'd have never seen it. Because I really do like the woods and the thought of going out there hiking and stuff like that. But then, I don't know, I got that uneasy feeling of seeing it again, and I don't really want to ever have that happen again.
Oh, I think almost anyone could understand that. If you wouldn't have had your experience, would you have ever believed someone else who had approached you and told you about having one themselves?
No, I'd have never believed it. Never. It sounds like something off TV or a dream. It's sobering. Like, I don't know. It blows my mind. I don't know how come. What's the deal? Why it ain't recognized as a species?
Well, for that to happen, a lot more evidence would have to be put before the scientific community, so I'm not surprised that they're not recognized as being in existence.
I know all the videos and stuff. It's crazy.
Oh, I'd say. There are videos out there of these things. A lot of people who follow the topic don't realize that, but yeah, there are videos out there proving their existence, but unfortunately, it's going to take a lot more than that to prove that they actually do exist to the scientific community, since you can fake something like that. Have you heard of people in your area seeing dogmen before?
I've never heard anybody say nothing about seeing stuff, but what people do see around here, they say it be like Bigfoot. They don't really get an actual close encounter. It's just what they hear or see in the distance. Nobody really talks about nothing like that around here.
Yeah, that's the way it is pretty much anywhere you go. If you talk about seeing something like that, it's almost a given that you're going to be ridiculed and made fun of, so why would most people who see one come forward and talk about it, unfortunately?
Yeah, it's been eating away at me all my life. Make me feel like I'm the only person up until I found your show. I felt like I was a loner, and it just makes you think you're crazy. I don't know. It just reach another level.
Yeah, I know it's really hard to deal with. At least now you know you're not crazy, which is one of the biggest steps towards recovering from it. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, and still feel that uneasy feeling.
That's not a surprise. Everyone's got their own speed that they heal, that they recover from something like this. Hopefully, sooner rather than later, you'll bounce back to a position where you can talk about it without feeling all that much tension. But only time will tell. John, tell us about the area where you saw this dog man.
Well, at the time, this was in the 80s. It was pretty wooded back then before all the people cutting down from houses and residential areas. But there is a river right here at my house. And at the time, same spot, there's a river runs right behind it, about maybe an eighth of a mile, quarter mile at the most. And it's always been wooded, and it still is through that strip. And that's the area where I had seen.
It does sound like it's a totally different place. Back then, though, what kind of food sources would have been around for a dog man to live on?
At that time, we had plenty of deer. I still see deer around here in the field behind my house. 'Cause I got a couple patches of woods around me. And there are quite a few chicken houses around, even then and now. At that time, I was so young that it's kind of hard to justify what was back then.
Oh no, I can understand that. Thinking back to how it was back then, if you can remember, can you recall if they had any wild hogs around back then?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And there's some domestic pigs that got loose. Plenty of them had got loose. And you know how they are.
It sounds to me like any dogman around that area would have had plenty of food sources to pick from, so it's not hard to imagine how a dogman could have made its living back then.
Yeah, there'd be quite a few shows. I'm seeing quite a few TV shows come here on hunting pigs or boar. It's pretty popular around here. Well, there's bear around here also, but they're small, really nothing. It's kind of rare to see a bear there, but they are here.
Were they around back then?
Oh, yeah. I have uncles that hunt them still to this day. That's all they hunt.
We don't know the dogmen prey upon bear. Maybe they do eat bear, but all we can do is guess on that. With the weapons that they carry and considering how big a dogman can get, I don't rule it out as a possibility.
I know for a fact that they released a bunch of coyotes around here. It was last year because we're overpopulated with deer, especially towards Bladenboro. I know they released a lot of coyotes to try to help with the population because there's not as many hunters most places, I guess. And I've seen plenty of fox and bobcats, but I doubt they eat them. It's hard to say that.
From the way you said what you did about coyotes, it sounds like back then when you had that encounter, you didn't have coyotes around.
I still, to this day, I ain't never seen none, but everybody else. I don't go in the woods to begin with. That's my friends hunting stuff. So, and that's what they be telling me about.
So you pretty much do the best you can to stay out of the woods now.
Oh, yeah. That's all. I like to go to state parks every once in a while on Sundays during the daytime to walk the trails, but I really don't go too far. It don't be nothing to even talk about, you know. And that's with a bunch of people. So.
Oh, no, I can understand. I wouldn't blame you after what you've been through. All right, John, let's get into the details of this encounter. Please tell us every last detail that comes to mind about it.
Righty then. I was about 8 or 9 years old and was having a little get-together at my mother's friend's house. I had a buddy that stayed there at the time. His name was Randy. My mom's best friend had to run an errand next door, which was across the road. It really wasn't far. She asked if we wanted to ride, so we rode with her. And they weren't a couple minutes away. We sat in the car to wait on her while she had to do whatever she was going to do at the neighbor's house. While we were sitting there, we got tired of waiting, so we just went in to rush her up, get her to come on out so we could go back to the house. When we come back to the car, we were sitting there waiting, and the dogs was barking, going crazy. They had a bunch of bulldogs along the wood line, and then all of a sudden we noticed that the dogs had quit barking. Me and my friend Randy were sitting in the back seat of the car. I think it was a Buick Regal. When we noticed that the dogs quit barking, we kind of started looking around like we thought maybe my mom's friend was coming back to the car to get us or to leave. And then I noticed at the corner of my eye coming from the back of the car towards the wood line is when I seen the dog man werewolf. I only got a side view of it, but it looked similar to the Lycan off of Underworld, but it didn't have the beard. It was just like a dog head with a massive chest with a little bit of a hump in its back. It didn't have fur, but it had like long hair everywhere, but its stomach was sucked in. It was built like a bodybuilder, but it was skinny at the same time. It's hard to explain. It was crazy. I could see its snout wrinkled back, like wrinkling up, and it was showing its teeth. It looked just like a person, the way its arms were. Like on the pictures I see, they have long arms, but it didn't really have that. It had like regular human arms, like, but it was like raccoon hands. And it was just creeping by, like it didn't even see us. But we're sitting in the back of the car with our eyeballs just staring, froze. I guess it didn't see us because it never acted like it did see us. It just creeped on by, making like a growling face. I can't explain how that, like it was showing its fang. And then we got down into the floorboard, scared, and never heard or seen nothing after that. It was until my mom's friend come tapping at the window, beating on it really, hollering, let me in, and we go to freaking out, thinking we didn't know if it was getting her or what she was wanting, but she just wanted to get in so she could go on back to where my mom was across the road. And we finally unlocked the doors to let her in, but apparently she never seen anything because she never said anything. And to this day, I still ain't never said nothing to nobody besides my wife. I don't even talk about it with my friend Randy at the time. I ain't never even talked to it about him. Ask him. I can't even get the nerve up to ask that to her now when I see him about what happened that night. What did he see? It's just so uncomforting to talk about it with other people. Oh, man. But that's basically all what we've seen. It was brief, but it felt like an eternity. And I still got that image in my head, and I think about that every second of the day, it seems like.
From talking with you, John, about your encounter, it's obvious to me that that encounter tore you down in a way. I don't know when. I don't think anyone could have a way of knowing how long it would take, but I think eventually you are going to get back to the point where you can deal with this in a way that you can do what you need to do without being hindered by it. I hope that's sooner rather than later. But having said that, you mentioned that your wife is the only other person that you've told about this encounter. Is that because of her reaction to you sharing this with her, or is it just because your wife is the only person you trust enough to share something like that with without knowing you're going to get laughed at?
Well, what happened is her brother's like a real big hunter, and he's one of the people that talk about they heard something in the woods, but they never really seen anything. And I hadn't even told her about what I had seen at the time, and that kind of opened me up when we first met. And then I told her about what I seen, and she actually, believed me. Well, if she don't, she never said she didn't. So, and that's how come I opened up to her. to tell her what had happened.
I see. A lot of eyewitnesses fight this inner battle, John, where when they know someone who goes out into the woods with any kind of regularity, they fight this inner battle of, should I let them know about what's out there so that they can protect themselves, or should I just keep it to myself because of the chances that they're going to laugh at me if I tell them something like this? On your end, do you fight a little inside battle like that, or have you decided just flat out not to tell anyone and you don't even get tempted to share this info?
You about had to beat information out of me to get me to talk. I don't really tell nobody anything unless they go to talking about what they have seen or encountered in their life. Then I kind of open up. Most of the time, I really don't tell nobody. I hadn't told nobody but her.
Yeah, I can understand. That makes sense. What was the hardest thing about all this to get over?
I ain't really got over none of it, to tell you the truth. It's just a never-ending battle. I'd really like to see it again, to tell you the truth, just to verify that, that I've seen that ain't crazy, but then again, I don't know. I'd rather just see it on YouTube or listen to somebody else's. It just, I don't know. I hadn't really got over none of it, to tell you the truth. It just freaks me out.
Oh, I'm sure it did. You talked about how it looked when you saw it creeping past the car. In your opinion, did it look more biological or just flat out evil?
It looked like angry, like a German Shepherd, like angry, like a mad German Shepherd, like you come on its territory. And I don't know, it just, that's what only way I can describe it like, but with a human body, like, but bodybuilder type. But yeah, it definitely biological, like flesh and blood. Yeah, I definitely seen that. It was like 6, 8 foot away from the car. It was about 6, 7 foot tall at the most. It weren't really that tall because it was taller than the car. But it's crazy.
Oh, I'd say, and then some. You described its movement as looking like it was creeping past the car. Is it safe to say that it never did stop? It just kept on moving as it went past?
Yeah, I think it probably did. We freaked out and got to the floorboard, and I never moved an inch after me or Randy when we seen that. And we probably laid there about 5, 10 minutes, maybe at the most, before my mom's friend come out to the car. It's kind of hard to say that what was going on. It might have. I'm pretty sure it probably did see us jump to the floorboard, the car rocked, but we never heard anything neither. So, but it was creeping by like it was stalking, like it seen something. It never looked at us. It was looking forward the whole time, like it had something it was watching, which was surrounded by dogs. I mean, through the wood line. So it could have been there to get one of the animals there or something. We messed that up for it.
Did you have the windows all the way up, or were they down at all where you might have had a chance to smell anything?
The windows was up. I didn't smell nothing. I'm glad they was up too. I didn't smell nothing at that. Even when we walked out from inside the house to the car, I never smelled anything besides the usual dog smells, from the older dogs that they had, It's kind of hard to smell anything besides that.
Since you said the windows were all the way up, it'd be pretty hard to notice this, but I want to ask you anyway. Did you notice by chance all the ambient sounds around you of all the insects and other animals like that? Did they go silent before this dogman appeared? I know you said the dogs were making a lot of noise, but was everything else silent from what you could tell?
Oh yeah, it was dead silent. You couldn't hear nothing. Even the dogs had stopped barking, so they weren't nothing going on. And it was during the summertime, and we didn't hear no crickets, so it was nothing going on. That's what made it even more creepier. It was dead silent.
I see. I know you didn't get the best look at this thing, but did you by chance get a look to see if it had any genitalia that was visible?
Actually, from the side, I didn't see anything. What I focused in on was its teeth and the way its nose was wrinkled back. I seen the hands and the torso and the stomach, you know how that looked, and the tail. But once it got past the tail, everything else, like, I can't really recall on that area. I never really paid that much attention to it. But it looked exactly like that lichen, but its head wasn't as big, and it didn't have a hair under its chin like that there. It was just like a German Shepherd walking on two legs.
When you describe it as looking like a German Shepherd walking on two legs, it sounds to me like its head was in proportion to its body. Is that true, or was its head a little bigger in proportion?
Its head was in proportion with its body. It just had that massive chest and the hump in its back, but it didn't have fur like the German Shepherd. It looked like hair or something, but it was full of hair, but it was real thin hair, and you could see all the muscle detail in it and its rib cage, and I could see the abs in its stomach from the side. That's really all I noticed about that there was. But it was just like a German Shepherd upright, but it was just, instead of fur, it had like hair, but it was thin hair. And across its back, you could tell how, when it was teeth showing, you could see like on the back hair was like standing up, like, you know how when regular dogs get angry, how the hair stands up on them, like, it's hard to explain, but it was kind of like that there.
Did you happen to see if it had claws or fingernails?
It was just like a raccoon's hand, exactly. It was exactly like that. It had like, it weren't claws, it was just like long fingernails. I don't know how it could go in between, really and truly. It's hard to tell. It was just identical to a raccoon's hand. So that image, when I seen it, it's burnt into my head for the rest of my life. It's just crazy.
Yeah, the whole thing is crazy. The idea that something like them could be out there and roaming around. Do you have any Indian burial grounds in your area that you know of?
I always heard that there was some, but from where my encounter was and where it was at, it was maybe 5 to 6 miles away, and it was covered up by a schoolhouse. So where it used to be at is a schoolhouse now. But I never really researched into that. But I need to look into that to verify that. But I always heard that school was built on top of an Indian burial grounds.
Did you know that these things are more commonly seen in areas where there are mounds like that around?
I heard briefly about stuff like that, but no, I didn't really know that.
Yeah, for whatever reason, it does seem to highly increase the chances of you having an encounter if there are burial mounds like that in the area. I don't know why, but that seems to be the case.
I definitely need to look up where all the known burial grounds is, then for sure, and stay away from that little area.
Yeah, I'd say so. That is a shame if, like what you were just mentioning, if they did build a school on top of where a burial mound was at one time. That's horrible.
Yeah. This here was from an employee that's been there working since the 60s that told me this. And that's why I never really looked into it, because I always took their word into it.
Through all of this, did you ever get the impression that dogman wasn't alone?
It seemed to be like it was by itself. It was so focused on what was ahead of it. And then when I seen it, and I watched it until we dunked down, but it seemed to be that it was alone at that time.
We'll never know for sure what it was focused on, but all I can say about that is thank goodness it wasn't focused on you two.
Yeah, we won't be talking right now, probably. I'm pretty sure something like that there, a brick house could hold that down. It amazes me when I hear people's encounters, how they talk about how it just jiggles doorknobs and don't never. I mean, what could really stop something that big, really and truly, if it wanted to come in, there ain't nothing stopping it.
I think a lot of that's to try and terrorize people when they jiggle door handles or fool with car doors, but there are people that turn up missing. Maybe those people are missing at the hands or claws of one of these things. It's hard to say.
Yeah, that's some of that missing 411 stuff there.
Yeah, I'd say so. When you described it as having the head of a German Shepherd, are you saying that its ears looked like a German Shepherd's ears, or did they look a little different?
They weren't as pointy on the up top. They was actually towards the side, but it's just had that dog head I was focusing in on. But the ears was actually on like the side, like instead of not on the top like a German Shepherd. You know how German Shepherds, they make that triangle look when they stand straight up. But I don't really know how to explain how the ears would look there. They're laid back. It was there, but that's what it reminds me of, a German Shepherd. Minus the ears. I don't know how to explain how the ears were, but they're like laid back like that. Not as big.
You said it did have its ears laid back like it was upset, like it was angry?
Yeah, definitely laid back.
Oh, that's not good. Does it blow your mind to think about the fact that there are people that'll do almost anything to go out into the bush and have an encounter with one of these things, having had an encounter with one yourself?
I don't understand people like that. They apparently ain't never seen anything, or really, he could be standing right beside of you and you would never see it, to be honest, because the way I noticed how cats and stuff around here and bobcats, how they blend into the wood. There is no way you would see anything a couple feet into the wood watching you or stalking you unless you would actually hear footsteps. I don't understand how people can do stuff like that. That apparently they ain't got nothing to lose. I heard a fella on one of the podcasts, I can't remember which one it was, he claimed that he knew exactly what made him mad to come to him every time. And I'm like, I wouldn't even want to know what he was going to do that to provoke him. I don't know. They wouldn't be prepared if they did see it, to be honest. If they'd seen what I've seen, they'd probably get under the sheets in bed.
Oh, I'll bet you're right. Well, John, it's about time to get out of here. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing the details of that encounter with us.
It feels pretty good to be able to talk to somebody about what I've seen.
I hope it does help you. In most cases, in almost every case, when an eyewitness comes on the show and has a chance to publicly put the details of their encounter out there with everyone, it really does seem to help quite a bit. I hope that is the case with you as well. I really do. Well, thanks again so much for your time, John. I really do appreciate it. You have yourself a great night, okay?
All right, you too.
Thank you.
Bye.